Yeah. Good evening and hello and welcome to Medicentia. As we start digesting, assimilating vaccines and their role in our health, in day-to-day health, and in the prevention against various diseases, especially infectious diseases, uh, I kindly request and plead to each one of you not to forget to subscribe to our channel, Medicentia. So, my dear brothers and sisters, like the vaccines, currently vaccines I talk of the day, they're a popular topic. Everyone is talking about vaccines, vaccines, vaccines. Yes, but before we go into the details about the vaccines, before we start understanding what the vaccines are, let us first have an overview about our immune system, about our immunity. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, our immune system is the defense. Our immune system contains the soldiers. It is also made up of the soldiers, and those soldiers protect our bodies. So when you look at our immune system, it is divided into two major components or two major wings. We have the innate immunity and the acquired or adaptive immunity. The innate immunity is the inborn immunity, the immunity that we are born with. And when you also further analyze and look at the innate immunity, it also has subdivisions. Under those subdivisions, we are going to see that we have the barriers. Barriers that I'm going to begin with include the skin. Our skin is a natural barrier. It is a component of the innate immunity, and it comprises of various components like the sebum, which is a chemical. Even we have the sweat glands within the skin, and also within the sweat, you find also chemicals which inactivate some of the bacteria, the viruses, and also in addition, the skin prevents the entry of various infectious microorganisms and non-infectious directly into our bodies. When you look at the skin is made up of the cells. The cells within the skin, we have examples of cells like the mast cells. Mast cells produce histamine, and the mast cells participate in also the defense of the body. You know what histamine does in hypersensitivity or in immune reactions. When we have the histiocytes within the skin, the histiocytes are part of the immune system. We have the Langerhans cells. The Langerhans cells are found within the skin as well. We have the dendritic cells. All those are part and parcel of the innate immune system. They are found in the skin. Within the mucous membranes. The mucous membranes are also a continuity of the skin. We also have the mast cells there. We have also immunoglobulins like immunoglobulin A. Immunoglobulin A is, of course, it is secretory. It is secretory. It is most abundant in the secretions. That is immunoglobulin A. So when you also look at the other natural barriers that we are born with under innate immunity, under natural immunity that we are born with, we have the hydrochloric acid within the stomach. Hydrochloric acid kills and inactivates parasites, fungi, inactivates bacteria, viruses that we ingest along with the food or with the other drinks. So hydrochloric acid is part and parcel of the natural or innate immunity that we are born with. We have the tears. Within the tears, we have the lysozymes within the tears, and the lysozymes are part and parcel of the natural immunity. Within the milk, within the breast milk, we have the lactoferrins. Lactoferrins are also important within as far as defense of our bodies is concerned. We have the defensins. Those are the cationic peptides. The cationic peptides that are actually they have a significant activity against the viruses, against the bacteria, and some fungi and the parasites. So, my dear brothers and sisters, when I now focus my attention to the cells of the natural immunity, we have cells like the macrophages. The macrophages and examples of macrophages, we have the Kupffer cells of the liver, we have the dust cells or the alveolar, the Ranga alveolar macrophages or the dust cells. We have the macroglia within the brain. We have the splenic macrophages. We have the osteoclasts. We have the phagocytic mesangial cells, osteoclasts, which are found within the bones. We have the phagocytic mesangial cells, which are found within the kidneys. We have so many other macrophages. Together, they form the reticuloendothelial system. And the macrophages, as you know them, they are derivatives. They are the parent of all the macrophages are the monocytes. The monocytes, when they migrate from blood and go to the peripheral tissues, they increase in size and transform into the what we call the macrophages. All those are under innate immunity. Under innate immunity, we are also born with the cells like the neutrophils. Neutrophils, also known as the polymorphonuclear leukocytes, they are highly phagocytic, just like macrophages. They engulf or they swallow and digest the invading microbes and destroy them into pieces, of which pieces later, some of those pieces from the microbes are presented to the CD4 cells or the T lymphocytes. T helper 1, T helper 2, T helper 3, T helper 17. Those are the ones that I'm talking about. But neutrophils are not antigen-presenting cells. For them, they don't present antigens. I tell you, it's only the macrophages. Among the cells which present the antigens, we have the dendritic cells, we have the macrophages, and the B lymphocytes. But the B lymphocytes are not under innate immunity, for your information. So we have others like the eosinophils, we have basophils, all those fall under innate immunity. So under innate immunity, we have the barriers, as you can see, and also the cellular components. The cellular components, they are the typical soldiers. Then at this point, my dear brothers and sisters worldwide, we can now shift and talk about acquired immunity or adaptive immunity. Excuse me. Under adaptive immunity, we have cells like adaptive immunity means this is the immunity that develops usually after birth. It adapts and with the time it keeps on developing with the experience. So by the time we are born, at the time of birth, that wing of immunity, of immune system or of our body defense is actually inactive. Then with the experience, as we're exposed to the environment, it starts actually developing. And under this, we are going to see we have cells like the B lymphocytes. B lymphocytes they are called B lymphocytes because they were first identified from a part in birds that fly. I mean, class aves, birds that fly. That part is a lymphoid tissue called the bursa of Fabricius. So they were given the name B standing for the bursa, but not bursa. I don't mean the accountant. Buraca, not R. That is Bassa of Fabricius, not Bassa of Fabricus, but Bassa of Fabricius. That's why those cells were named, the B stands for Bassa, B cells, B lymphocytes. Then T lymphocytes, they are also named so because they first developed from the thymus. Then T stands for the thymus. Thymus derived the lymphocytes, or thymus groomed lymphocytes. Of course, they all begin. They begin with the yolk sac, the bone marrow, the liver. Then along the way towards birth, they migrate to the thymus gland, and the thymus gland actually keeps on grooming them before adolescence. Of course, when adolescence sets in, the thymus shrinks, and other tissues like the spleen, the lymph nodes, they take over the role of grooming the lymphocytes like that. Of course, you know what makes the thymus to shrink or to keep on degenerating? It's the corticosteroids that are released actually in high levels at puberty. So, my dear brothers and sisters, under still adaptive immunity, we have had the types of cells that we have. I forgot to also inform you about natural immunity. And natural immunity also have what we call the defense. We have what we call the complement system. We also have a complement system with all its proteins. Back to what we call our acquired immunity or adaptive immunity, we have antibodies. Antibodies follow under acquired immunity. The only, my dear brothers and sisters, the only antibody that we are born with mainly is immunoglobulin G, and that immunoglobulin G is not produced from our bodies as babies. No, it is the only antibody that is mainly capable of crossing from the maternal blood through the placenta to the fetal blood or to the blood of the baby. That is the only antibody that we are born with, and is not ours, by mind you. So the antibodies or the immunoglobulins fall under what we call acquired or adaptive immunity. Where do antibodies come from? Where do the immunoglobulins come from? Immunoglobulins are produced by the B lymphocytes. To narrow it further, these B lymphocytes, they are specialized. When the B lymphocytes specialize to start producing antibodies, they are referred to as plasma cells. So it's the plasma cells, the clones of various clones of the plasma cells that produce antibodies, various types of antibodies, starting or antibodies or immunoglobulin, starting from immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin M, immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin E, immunoglobulin D. Furthermore, if you want to know why they are given these letters, you know medicine. Most medical literature is derived from, most medical vocabulary is derived from the languages like Latin, Greek. Those are the two main languages that form the biggest percentage, about 98% of the medical literature or the medical vocabulary. Then other languages also keep on falling in, keep on chipping in, like that. So immunoglobulin A stands for alpha. Immunoglobulin M stands for mu. Immunoglobulin E stands for epsilon. Immunoglobulin D stands for delta. Immunoglobulin G stands for gamma. So those are the basic, those are the 5 types of antibodies. They also fall into what we call isotypes. By the way, antibodies also fall into what we call isotypes. For example, when you look at immunoglobulin A is actually it has 2 variants. It has 2 forms. We have immunoglobulin A, which is a dimer, and the one which is a dimer is mainly actually in blood. Then we also have the one which is a monomer. A monomer is mainly actually produced by the plasma cells that are found within the mucous membranes, those monomers, like that. Because you find the monomeric immunoglobulin A, the one which is mainly found within the mucous membranes, the one that keeps on binding and trapping the foreign invaders, maybe within the airway, within the esophagus, within the intestines, even in the eyes. We have all those immunoglobulins. So, my dear brothers and sisters, at this point, allow me to introduce the topic of the vaccines that we are mainly focusing on. So, what are the vaccines? Vaccines are special types of drugs. Vaccines are a special type of drugs which are a special type of drugs or medicines which are used to protect us mainly from the infectious diseases. However, like I said previously, that that the vaccines are also produced to prevent maybe against this, to protect us against diseases like cancer. And I went ahead to cite vaccines like Gardasil, Savarix, which are used in the prevention of cervical cancers. I further went ahead to talk about vaccines that are being developed to protect us against diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Huntington's disease, Parkinson's disease, Crohn's diseases like Kuru, fetal familial insomnia 1 and 2, others like Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, OCJD, and so many others that we are going to talk about. But mainly, vaccines are produced to protect us against infectious diseases like polio, coronavirus disease 2019, influenza, tuberculosis, Salmonella typhi, and Salmonella typhi and paratyphi, whooping cough, even those old immunizable diseases, measles, we have also toxoids like that. So let us begin. Let us begin with the field of vaccinology. How did the field of vaccinology begin? How did the science of producing vaccines begin? This is it. Here it is. The field of vaccinology began with the first recognition that a person who survived an infection was much less likely to suffer from that disease in the future in comparison with a person who had not previously had the disease. That is, the infectious disease, if did not kill the person, resulted in an experienced protected state. Here we say that the person has immunity. Excuse me. Vaccines. Vaccines reduce morbidity and mortality that is caused by infectious disease in children, in adolescents, in adults like us, and the elderly. Those are the seniors in the population. So we say that vulnerable community members whose immune systems are unable to respond well to vaccines, for example, the newborn babies, the immunocompromised persons or individuals, or the adults or the elderly, or unable to receive vaccines because of maybe allergy or a medical contradiction or contraindication rather, they depend on immunization of surrounding community members for protection against the vaccine preventable diseases, and that is what we call herd immunity in some cases, of course in most cases, not some cases. So the vaccinated community in this case becomes an immunological cocoon or wall of protection of these vulnerable members of the society. So, my dear brothers and sisters worldwide, let us, at this point, let us share the history of the vaccines. How did the vaccines come into existence? Who started the science of vaccination and the production of vaccines? This is how it all started many centuries, about 2 centuries ago. The earliest known, now here is the history. The earliest known vaccines for which records have been identified were against a disease called smallpox. And smallpox, by the way, was also a viral disease, and it was deadly. It used to kill people in millions, actually, not like the current coronavirus pandemic that is at least it is, we cannot compare it to influenza pandemic of 1918 and the era of those of smallpox. By the way, smallpox was eradicated. It is the only viral condition which was eradicated, and it was eradicated in 19. It was declared, the world was declared free of smallpox in 1977. The last case was seen in the year 1977 in Somalia. In Somalia, that was the last case. However, of course, some laboratories in the countries that I don't want to mention, still they have still kept some viruses, maybe for future use, maybe for biowarfare. I don't know why. That will be a topic of another day. Let us continue. So the earliest known vaccines for which root cause have been identified were against the smallpox, which was a viral infection, and were used in Asia early in the second millennium. Of course, they were not called vaccines. They are not called vaccines, no. The practice was called variolation. Variolation, and it involved exposing usually through the exposing individuals usually through the intranasal route. The intranasal route, that like they will get some nasal drops, like the way some people use the Covidex these days. Some you take some drops, then others are past inaugurated. They are put in the nose. We administer through the nostrils. So the practice was called variolation, never forget. And it involved exposing an individual, usually through the intranasal route. A smallpox is susceptible, of course, not previous. This used to be an individual, human beings who were susceptible to developing smallpox. Those ones who were not previously infected. So they would be exposed to material from the dried scabs of a person who had smallpox. And if the recipient survived, or he or she was protected against the future if the recipient did not die due to exposure, that person was protected against the future smallpox disease. And that is how the science of vaccination or variolation began, or the science of vaccinology began. I hope we are together and you are getting me. So since natural smallpox had about 32% mortality rate, and variolation had a lower mortality rate, less than, by the way, 1%. So it worked out. It ended up saving very, very many people. So we see that the ancient practice was another example of weighing the risk to benefit ratio for a human health intervention. I hope we are together. By 1700, variolation was employed in number of societies in Africa, in India, and in the Ottoman Empire. Who are the Ottomans? In the Ottoman Empire, the present day were present day Turkey. Those the Ottomans, the Turkish. The Ottomans are the Turkish are the descendants of the Ottomans. So the practice of variolation was common in Africa, in India, and in the Ottoman Empire. And it was also in use in countries like England, of course, the typical British Empire, and in France in the 1700s. I hope we are together. I hope you are following the history. The practice of variolation was not without, of course, risks. And sometimes, by the way, it caused the outbreaks of mild form of the disease. Among the many who died, among the many who died as a result of variolation was the son of England's King George III. Then there came in the year 1796, Edward Jenner, an English physician, was searching for a safer alternative to variolation, and he made a breakthrough which made him to become the father of vaccinology. So the father of vaccinology, the father of modern day vaccinology is Edward Jenner. He was an English physician. So in 1796, rather, Edward Jenner made a breakthrough which made him to become the founding father of vaccinology as a special discipline. He performed, what did he do? What made him so special? He performed a smallpox vaccination experiment on James Phipps on May 14th, it was May 14th, 1796, using as the vaccine cowpox pass from regions on the hands of a patient who was called, is it Nerums? It was a female, I think Sarah Nerums, a milkmaid. So what did Dr. Jenner do? Dr. Jenner then corrected region material from a patient, from that patient. Excuse me. They corrected, after correcting that material from a region material from a scab of that patient who had smallpox. He used this viral challenge as a stock, as the subsequent vaccine. So younger Phipps survived both the vaccination. Actually, he used it on himself. He got it from Sarah Nerons, and he had to infect himself. He became actually, he wanted to become, I can say that he wanted to become himself, wanted to become a sacrificial lamb. So the younger Phipps both survived the vaccination and the challenge. And Jenner first reported his experiment in the year 1797 in a short communication rejected. Of course, like the way our National Drug Authority first had to first, of course, disturb Professor Ogwang with his Covidex that is providing some relief, not curative, but is providing us with some relief. So he also first met resistance from the Royal Society of Physicians of England. So of course, that did not deter him. It did not weaken him. It did not weaken him. Did not stop him from progressing. Of course, most of his colleagues, most people in inventions usually meet opposition. For example, you know Galileo. What happened to Galileo Galilei and the Pope? Was it Pope? Pope Sylvester, I don't know. Was it Pope? I think was it Pope Sylvester? Pope Sylvester the third. There's a Pope. When Galileo first invented the first telescope, you know his story. You know what happened in the 1700s. Galileo was opposed by the administration of the Pope who was there by that time, and he was first put under house arrest, by the way, for some years when he said that he had seen other planets outside the Earth, and yet, of course, we knew that our ancestors knew that there was only heaven and the earth. So for him, he said that he saw even other planets using his telescope, but the authorities did not believe in him. Actually, they thought that he was a heretic, and eventually, they first he suffered the horror being imprisoned. Then later on, he was freed when actually his science was proved to be correct. So likewise, such things happen when you make an invention. In most cases, very few people will believe in you. So likewise, Dr. Edward Jenner first experienced actually resistance. You know, for us who are Catholics, you know Padre Pio. Padre Pio, you know what happened to Padre Pio when he started doing some miracles, and when he developed his stigmata. You know what happened to him? He was also first put on Ukatebe, was first put aside and investigated for a long period of time. You know, the other young man last year who tried to develop a bomb in Hoima. You know what happened to him. And even by the way, even the genius, one of the geniuses the world has ever enjoyed. Of course, we have had many, but out of the many, you have had the prominent ones like Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein. You know what happened? Even Einstein's theories of relativity first met a lot of resistance in the early 1900s. So what happened to later on? What did Edward Jenner? Let us progress. Later on, what did Edward Jenner do? Edward Jenner went ahead by adding a few more cases of his vaccine experiment, including one on his own son, by the way. And in the year 1798, he reported his findings in a self-published booklet that was entitled An Inquiry into the Causes and Effects of Variole Vaccinae, a disease discovered in some of the western counties of England, particularly Gloucestershire, and known by the name of the cowpox. So this self-published report and Jenner's subsequent use of cowpox virus vaccination were perceived with mixed reaction, of course. Jenner's work was considered controversial by some physicians, by many of his colleagues, by some of his colleagues, because of the introduction of a cow virus into humans. A famous satirical cartoon by James Gilray, like for example, currently we have this prominent cartoonist called who? Spire. Spire, by the way, these days I enjoy Spire cartoons. I like them. Of course, they communicate a lot of messages. So, likewise, during those days, there was a famous satirical cartoonist called James Gilray. He depicted the cow parts emerging from the vaccinated persons, and that alone created the fear that, oh, you people, you who are accepting to be vaccinated by Edward Jenner using cowpox virus, you are going to develop horns like cows, like cattle. You are going to develop hardy skins. You are going to develop actually to become like real cattle. Therefore, you are going to develop hooves. You don't go for vaccination. And of course, this is exactly the negative conspiracy and the negative propaganda. Exactly, it's what we are facing. We are facing a lot of negative propaganda and negative conspiracies against the vaccination. Of course, we can't say that the vaccines are 100% safe. Of course, some of the ingredients used, like the adjuvants used, like for example, aluminum oxide that is used in some of those vaccines, can actually cause severe allergic reactions in some individuals. That is what makes them, of course, a bit, of course, skeptical. That's what makes them a bit unsafe. But of course, in 99 point something percent of the vaccines are usually safe, and they are usually safe, I tell you. Of course, I know we are worried that our vaccines, they are mixed up with some poisons. That is the rumors. Those are the rumors that are circulating worldwide. Negative conspiracy theories are still circulating. Negative propaganda. Of course, the vaccines were developed hurriedly. We expect some of those things to happen because, development of vaccines can take more than actually 20 years. Like I said in the previous video, it takes a very long time to develop actually an effective vaccine, which is even very safe, which has been proven beyond reasonable doubt. But in this case, because we are in a crisis, we are under attack, and in a crisis caused by COVID-19, COVID pandemic. That's why these vaccines, of course, were produced hurriedly. We expect some of those things to happen. Therefore, even Edward Jenner himself encountered a lot of negative conspiracies and propaganda during his time. So, during that time, other opponents of vaccination were those with financial interests in lucrative variolation practices. When vaccination in England was made compulsory by the Vaccination Act of 1853, an organized anti-vaccination movement arose almost immediately. This resulted into a rapid and wide dissemination of misinformation about vaccines and anti-vaccination propaganda and pseudoscience, which later on obstructed the traditional scientific evaluation and further feeding the general public's fears and misunderstandings. Therefore, what we are experiencing is not new. The conspiracy theories that are circulating around are not new. So, in summary, we need to note and always acknowledge that Gina's work of 2+ centuries ago paved the way and the foundations of many of the elements of today's translational vaccinology. So, my dear brothers and sisters, as you watch and listen to this video, don't forget to hit the subscription button as we keep on supporting each other. We link up in the next video as we shall be continuing with our topic of vaccines so that we understand vaccine by vaccine. When you look at, for example, vaccines like Johnson, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, BioNTech, Johnson and Johnson, Moderna, we shall know where they fall. In which category of the vaccines do they fall? Then later on, we shall also look at others which are not vaccines but toxoids. Thank you very much for watching and listening. We link up then.